Hello everyone, my name is Laura and today I will be taking you through the webinar. In this session we aim to give you all of the information that you need to get started with Sage Business Cloud Payroll. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you would like to ask any questions throughout today's webinar or see the questions others are asking, please use the question mark icon on the right of the screen. There's also a handouts option where you can download the slides from today's webinar and a useful links document. Let's take a look at what we're going to cover within the next hour. So we'll start with an introduction to the payroll and we'll show you how to access and navigate the software. We'll cover how to set up, whether you're doing this as a new business or whether you're moving from an existing software. There's some additional setup in there too, things like setting up employment allowance, payments and deductions and pensions. And at the end of the session today, once we've showed you how to set up your payroll, we will show you how to run a payroll from start to finish, including submitting to HMRC and any month-end tasks. So let's start with an introduction where I'll show you how to navigate the software. So first of all, within the payroll software, you have your tabs along the top. You've got your payroll summary screen, which gives you an overview of your next payroll, your RTI information, and your automatic enrolment and pensions info. The pay runs tab will show you any completed pay runs that you have already ran within your payroll. In your employees tab, you will see any current members of staff. You can see your pensions within the pensions schemes at the top. You have your year-end tab where you would go to run any year-end processing. You've got a reporting tab with a drop-down here with reports that you can run within the payroll. And you have your settings tab for any payroll settings, any payslip settings, and you'll be able to check your HMRC log-on details, things like that within here. You can also switch between payroll and accounting at the drop down at the top there. If you do have accounting as well as payroll, you can set up any payroll integration settings in the accounting software. At the drop down at the top where your company name will show, you have an option to manage business account. Within here, you can change your business information, your direct debit information, and manage your subscription and invoices from Sage. So if you want to click on Manage Subscription here, you will be able to see a Manage Services button on the top right, and that will allow you to upgrade or downgrade your payroll depending on how many employees you have. So everything can be managed within the software, and we'll go through any help articles and any help information at the end of the session, just in case there's something you're not sure of within the software. So we'll now show you how to get up and running and how to get to the stage where you're actually ready to run your first payroll. We've put together a checklist of information you will need to set up your payroll. The requirements vary depending on whether you are a brand new company setting up your payroll for the first time, or if you have existing employees and you are moving to Sage Payroll. First, we have the employer details, the PAYE reference, accounts office reference, and online services login information. If you are an existing payroll moving partway through the year, you'll need your last completed P32 period and information on how much you've claimed in employment allowance so far within the tax year. A P32 period can be monthly or quarterly, and this is how often you pay HMRC. We'd advise that you move your payroll after the last completed P32 reporting period in your existing software. Employee details are next. You'll need employee names, addresses, dates of birth and national insurance numbers. If you are a new business and you're employing new staff, you will need P45 from their previous employment, or you can get them to complete the starter checklist, also known as P46, which is available from the gov.uk website. If you're bringing over an existing payroll partway through the year, you'll need year-to-date information, usually on P11 reports. And if you have an existing payroll, you can also bring over any existing RTI pay ID numbers for each employee. Lastly, you will need any pension provider information, including any references, groups or payment sources, how the pension is calculated, and what the employee and employer contribution rates are. So you'll need all of your information with regards to the pension, and if you are unsure, you can always get that from your pension provider. You'll also need your original staging date, and if you're a new company, your duties start date will be the date you first employed your initial member of staff. We will cover these in a little bit more detail as we go through the webinar, and we'll show you the video demos on each of the setup options as well. So let's take a look at what's involved with actually setting up your payroll. When you first subscribe to the payroll software, you will see the welcome screen. You've got three options within that welcome screen: enter manually, import FPS, and new company. You would enter manually if you have existing payroll data that you want to bring over to Sage Payroll partway through the tax year. That's also known as a mid-year setup. You can use the Import FPS option to import an XML file from your previous software to set up your employees. And the new company option would be used if you're a new company taking on your first employees, or if you're migrating an existing payroll, but you're doing that at the start of the tax year. So we're going to look at setting up a new payroll from scratch first. That's the one where you're coming over either at the beginning of the tax year with an existing payroll, or if you're a brand new company. We will show you the mid-year setup option a little bit later in the webinar, and what I'll do is I'll play a video demo recorded by one of my colleagues now for you. We will be back in around 5 minutes to recap on that video.
In this demo, I'm going to show you how to set up a new payroll in Sage Payroll. We're starting from the Summary tab, where I'll choose the New Company option. You can now see the 2 steps involved. We'll need to set up our employee paydays by creating a payday calendar, and then we'll add our employees to payroll. To set up the paydays, we can click the link next to step 1. This opens the payday calendar settings, where we have options to set up weekly, monthly, 2-weekly or 4-weekly calendars. For this demo, we'll set up a weekly calendar. You'll need to choose a day of the week for the employee's payday, and in this case, our employees are going to be paid every Friday, so we'll choose Friday from the list. We also need to confirm the date of the first pay run, which in my example will be Friday the 9th of April. There's an option to avoid public holidays and weekends, but I'm going to clear that box as I always want the payday to be a Friday. To save this calendar, I'll click Save, and then if I need to make changes, I can go back to Manage Frequency and then edit the paydays. Or if I want to delete this calendar, click Remove Frequency. You can set up 2-weekly and 4-weekly calendars in the same way, but it's slightly different for a monthly calendar, so we'll create one of these now. As you can see, with a monthly calendar, you don't choose a day of the week, you choose a day of the month, and that can be the same day of each month, or you can choose the last day of the month. I'm going to choose same day of month, and for my monthly paid employees, this will be the 25th. We need to confirm the first pay run, so in our example, it'll be April 2021. And this time I'll avoid public holidays and weekends, so if the 25th falls on a weekend or bank holiday, the pay date will be the previous working day. If I save this calendar, we now have 2 pay calendars set up, and if we want to view the upcoming pay dates, I can click on View Pay Calendar here at the top of the screen. That's our pay calendar set up, but if you need to come back to this screen, you can go to Settings and then Calendar Settings. If we return to the summary and then go back into New Company, We can now complete step 2 and add our employees to payroll. If you click the link next to step 2, it takes you to the Employees tab, and there's an option at the top to create employee. We'll start with the employee's personal details and contact details. Make sure that you enter the employee's full name, the correct date of birth and national insurance number, and provide at least 2 address lines. If we scroll down, we can then enter employment and directorship details. This includes the pay cycle, contracted hours, the employee's start date, and payment method. You can then choose pay document preferences, and if you want to email payslips to your employees, enter their email address and a password. Moving down to previous tax details, you can see options for an existing employee, or a new employee with a P45 or a P46, also known as a starter checklist. In this demo, we'll choose P46. We can then choose the employee's circumstances from their starter checklist, and you can see an explanation of each statement here on the right. I'll choose the relevant national insurance category, and once all the information's entered, you can click on Save to create your first employee record. You can then repeat this for any other employees that you need to add to your payroll. Once you've set up your employees, if you return to the summary, you'll now see the payroll summary screen, which shows your next pay runs and RTI submissions, and there's a section for setting up automatic enrolment and pensions, which we'll show you later in this webinar.
So that was an overview of the setup process for a new company. First, you would set up your pay calendar, choosing your pay frequency and the day your employees will get paid, and you can choose to avoid any public holidays and weekends if you like. You can then go back in at any time to view any pay calendar information by going into the settings area and going into your calendar settings. And then we showed you how to enter your employees. So as discussed, you will need to enter full names, date of birth, national insurance numbers if you know that. Street information, line 1 and 2 are a minimum requirement for HMRC, so I would suggest entering as much information as you can here. And if you would like to email your payslips, you'll need an email address and password set up in the record as well. In the employment details, you can enter the pay cycle and contracted hours. There's an option to enter the RTI pay ID. So if you are running an existing payroll, you can bring that over from there. And if the person that you're adding is a director, you can check the box on the right and choose the calculation method for your director. The previous tax details for new employees, you can set up those as a P45 or a P46, which is also known as the starter checklist. That can be obtained from the gov.uk website. And then you've also got the option for existing employee if you're coming over from an existing software at the start of the year. We'll now move on and we'll show you how to set up the payroll if you're an existing payroll, but you're coming over part way through the year. As mentioned earlier, if you are moving partway through the year, there's some additional steps that you'll need to complete. So when you choose the option to migrate an existing payroll in the welcome screen, you'll be asked to confirm the last P32 reporting period. You'll be asked to set up your pay calendar and your employee records, which will include year-to-date values. So we do have a video to take you through those steps in more detail, so we'll take a look at that now. I will be back again after the video in a few minutes time to show you how to do the import FPS, go through some extra steps of the setup, and we will be back to recap soon.
In this demo, I'll show you how to set up your payroll if you're moving to Sage from another provider and you want to enter the details manually. We're starting from the Summary tab, and this time I'll click Enter Manually. This takes you to the Add Payroll Data screen, where there are 3 steps to complete. We'll need to set up a pay calendar, set up our employees, and then we'll need to confirm the details. In this first step, we'll need to confirm our P32 reporting frequency and payment method, and the last completed reporting period. You must complete all payrolls for this period, which ends on the 5th of the month in your previous payroll software. In this case, we've completed payroll up to month 2 in our previous software. We can then scroll down and I can set up my payday calendars. In this example, I have monthly paid employees paid on the 25th day of the month, and we're going to avoid public holidays and weekends. I'll then click Next and we can start to add our employees. To do this, click Add Employee and then enter the employee's name and their personal and contact details. We can then enter tax details. You'll need to make sure you enter their original start date, as well as their tax code and NI category and the RTI Pay ID from your previous payroll software. As they've already been paid in this tax year, we'll also need to enter opening balances. This includes taxable pay and tax paid, and national insurance details, which you can get from P11 or similar reports in your previous payroll software. So we'll tick Paid this year, and then enter their PAYE and NIC details. If I scroll down, if required, you can also enter director details, statutory payments received this year, such as maternity, adoption or paternity pay, and student loan repayments. And if they started employment in the current tax year, their P45 or P46 details. When you've finished, just click Save, and you can then repeat these steps for any other employees you need to set up. Just something to be aware of at this point, to save the information you've entered here, you must complete the confirmation step. If you navigate away from this screen, you will lose any information entered. As long as you've not processed any pay runs, you can come back to this screen to add other employees later. So to save the information you've entered so far, make sure you click Next and then Submit. When you've finished, you'll see the next steps, which include entering any statutory pay recovery and employment allowance values, confirming your employees' working patterns, entering current absences, and setting up student loan deductions. For now, I'll click Done, which then takes us back to our payroll summary. If you need to go back to add further employees or to review any of the information entered, you can click the link to review, edit, or further configure your migrated data. Then click Review or Edit your migrated data. And that takes you back to the Add Payroll Data screen. One final tip, if you want to check the opening balances that you've entered, you can run P11 reports, which will show a brought forward line for the year-to-date values. Simply click Year End and then Review Employee Pay P11. I'll view the P11 for the employee I've just set up. And as you can see, we've got the brought forward line confirming the values we entered as opening balances.
So that was moving Sage Payroll, entering details manually partway through the year. A top tip there is to complete the confirmation step even if you haven't entered all of your employees, because if you do navigate away from that screen without pressing the submit option and confirming the information, you will lose what you've entered so far. Remember, you can always go back into that wizard and add more employees or edit the data that you've entered, but it is worth noting, however, that once you have processed your first pay run, you cannot get back into that setup wizard. Let's give you a closer look at some of the reports as mentioned in the video. These are the P11 reports and should be available from your previous software. It's likely that these reports, or very similar ones, will be available. As you can see, we've got the P11 for PAYE and the P11 for National Insurance, and we've highlighted where the information on those reports can be transferred into your new Sage Payroll. Also showing at the bottom is the National Insurance year-to-date information, and on that report you can see statutory payment information and any student loan and postgraduate loans on that report too. In the settings area of the payroll, there's also a section to migrate the company information. So in settings and migrate payroll data employer values, you will need to enter the information for employment allowance so far in the year and statutory recovery information partway through the year. If you have used another payroll software to pay your employees, you will have submitted a full payment submission to HMRC each time you've paid your staff. The FPS includes a record of your employee details. This information can be imported into Sage Business Cloud Payroll to automatically create your employee records. If you have lots of employees, importing could save you lots of time. From the payroll welcome screen where you first sign up to payroll, you would click on the import FPS option. Remember, it was one of those 3 options we showed you at the very start of this webinar. When importing your employees from an FPS file, you should use the most recent file you have for your employees. This is to ensure that the information is up to date. The FPS needs to be in an XML format and must be no larger than 25 megabytes. You can import the FPS and bring the employee details only if you're starting at the start of the tax year. You can choose to bring over the year-to-date information that's included within that FPS XML document. And you can import more than one FPS if you have employees that are, for example, on different pay frequencies. If you do need help finding your most recent FPS and you're not currently using any Sage product, you should refer to your existing provider for more help on getting that FPS file. And there's a link at the bottom of this screen which is available in the download section on the right hand side for the handouts, and click on that link at the bottom. There's lots of help there on how to import an FPS, and there's also a video demo included in that article as well. So now we have employees and we have the payroll set up, we'll look at a few extra steps that you will need to consider. First, we'll take a look at setting up employment allowance and show you the payments and deductions after that, and then pensions and automatic enrolment. So if you're eligible for employment allowance, you will set this up within your software. It's a government scheme and it does allow employers to claim up to £4,000 per year, which will reduce your employer's national insurance contributions. It has to be set up every tax year, and to check whether you meet any criteria for this, you can go to the gov.uk website. In the payroll summary tab, there is a section showing the employment allowance option, and you can submit your claim to HMRC from that screen. So to record your claim, you can click on the Record Claim button. When you click on that option, you will be asked to confirm the industry sector that applies to your business and to confirm whether state aid rules apply. You will then make a one-off submission, usually at the start of the tax year, that confirms to HMRC that you intend to claim that allowance. HMRC will let you know if you're not entitled to claim. In the summary screen, you will see that the claim has been successfully sent, and at the end of each month, you will see the reclaim values on your P32 report. The values will be offset against your employer's national insurance up to £4,000 per year. The next thing that you might want to consider is setting up your payments and deductions. We do have another video to show you, and that is showing you how to set up payments within the software. We will be back in a few minutes' time once we've showed you that video to recap and move on to the next section.
Once you've set up your employees, there are a few things to set up before your first pay run. And the first thing we're going to look at is payments and deductions. Now, if I go to settings, at the top of the screen here, you'll see there is a setting for payment and deduction settings. And then you'll be able to create and manage payments and deductions using the tabs here at the top of the screen. Now, you don't have to set these up right now, but it will save you some time when you come to process your pay, because the payment will be available to select for your employees rather than you having to create it at that time. So I'm going to click on to create new payment here at the top, and you'll see for each payment you create, you'll need to choose a payment category, which would usually be either hourly payments or salary if you're creating any kind of fixed amount. But there are other options for holiday pay paid in advance, expenses, being taxable or non-taxable, and also redundancy payments that are subject to employers' national insurance. So we're just going to set up a couple of payments in this demo. The first one is going to be for my monthly paid employee, and they're going to receive a fixed salary. So I'm going to use salary as the payment category, and then under payment type, I'm going to choose salary again. It will then suggest the name and description that I want to use, and I see no reason to change those. And there's a further setting right at the bottom to include this payment in pension earnings and also in qualifying earnings. So I'm just going to save this first payment, and if I create a new payment, let's set one up for our weekly paid employees who are going to be paid using an hourly rate. So I'll choose hourly payments for this one. And then I'll choose basic hours. Again, I could change the name and description if I wanted to, and we have those settings for pension and qualifying earnings, which I'm going to include in both. And then we can repeat for any other types of payment we might need to make, for example, commission payments, or perhaps overtime being another hourly payment. The deductions is used primarily for voluntary deductions, or non-qualifying pension schemes. So you would only set up a pension here if it's not being used for automatic enrolment. And as you can see, it's also used for attachment of earnings orders and student loans. So I'm not going to set up any deductions. I've got a couple of payments to get us started. If we head back to the summary tab, we're then going to have a look at auto enrolment and pensions in our next demo.
So that was setting up a few payments within the settings tab. You can also set up payments and deductions from within your pay run if needed. It's really straightforward. You choose the category and the type, and you choose the name, and that name will show on the payslip. The description is just for your information, and the employee doesn't see that on the payslip anywhere. You do have tick boxes to include that payment in pension and qualifying earnings. You will understand a little more about what that does as we show you the pension setup video soon. Essentially, the pensionable earnings are used for schemes where specific elements of pay are used to calculate contributions, and qualifying earnings are used to assess your staff for automatic enrolment and for banded schemes that use earnings thresholds to calculate. If you are unsure about those, you can always ask your pension provider for more help and guidance on that. One final stage to set up the payroll before we are ready to run the payroll from start to finish is the automatic enrolment and pensions. You will need to record your duties start date or your staging date for automatic enrolment in the summary tab of your payroll, and there's some preparation steps to go through that will help you add your pension scheme to the software. We do have another video for you demoing how you would set those up. So what I'll do is I'll show you that video now and we'll be back to recap.
In this demo, we're going to take a look at setting up auto-enrollment and pensions in Sage Payroll. So you can see we've started here on the payroll summary, and towards the bottom right corner we've got the section for auto-enrollment/pensions, and there's a box where we need to record a staging date. Now for a brand new business that's just taken on their first employee, you won't have a staging date as such, you'll have a duty start date, which is the date that you took on that first employee. But if you're an existing payroll, you may have been given a staging date by the pensions regulator when your duties took effect, or if you're a more recent employer, you'll have had a duty start date when you took on your first employee. Now, as we're setting up a brand new company, we're going to enter a staging date which represents the date we took on our first employee. So in this case, it'll be the 1st of February 2021. And I'm then going to click the option to set my staging date. So you can see it tells me I've reached my staging date and there's a bit of preparation I will need to do. I'm just going to click OK to that message. And then we can either follow this link to prepare for auto-enrollment, or we can go to the Pensions tab at the top of the screen, and that will then take us into a preparation checklist. Now, if you're already staged for automatic enrolment, you'll be able to tick some of these off straight away. But as a brand new business, you should nominate a pensions contact with the pensions regulator. And there's a link for you to do that from this step. Once you've done it, you can tick the box to say that that's complete. And your next task is to assess your workforce. Now, Sage Payroll will do this automatically when you do your first pay run. So we're going to tick it to indicate that our workforce will be assessed. And then if we just scroll down, we can see step 3 is to review our pension arrangements. And this is the screen where we're going to be able to set up our pension scheme. Now, if you don't have an existing pension scheme because you're a brand new employer, there are some suggested providers that we link off to down here. But if you've already arranged your pension scheme, we can mark that as yes. And then we will need to add the details into Sage Payroll. So I'm going to click on Add a New Pension. And you'll see, again, we can choose from selected providers, Nest, Now Pensions, People's Pension, and Smart Pension. Or if you've gone with another provider, you can add your own pension by using this last option in the list. So I'm going to choose Nest. It's quite a common pension provider of small businesses. And you'll see I need to enter my employer reference, which I'm going to enter like so. And then we'll need to set up at least one group and one payment source. And the group is where you're going to enter the contribution details, so the percentages that you'd like to deduct and how that percentage should be calculated. Now, for other providers, this might be known as a plan, a pension plan. For Nest, it's a group. So I'm going to click onto Add Group. And I'm going to enter the name of the group that I set up on the Nest website. So let's just say it was Group 1. We can select our contribution rates, which in most cases will be percentages. And then we can specify the employer and the employee contribution to the pension. And currently the minimum pension contributions by law are 3% for the employer, a total of 8%. So that would be a 5% contribution for the employee if the employer is just put it in the minimum. Now the next setting is really important, the earnings basis, and this determines how the pension contribution will be calculated. So 2 options here. You can apply it, well 3 options in fact. You can apply to pensionable pay. So these are for schemes that use a specific type of payment, for example basic pay, as the basis of calculations. You can apply to qualifying earnings, which means all payments flagged as qualifying, and that should include overtime and bonus payments will be used to calculate pension contributions. but they will be restricted to earnings between a lower and upper threshold. And there's a customs earnings basis that you can choose as well. So I'm going to apply to qualifying earnings because that's the way my pension scheme works. There's a setting to deduct the contribution before tax if your scheme is what's known as a net pay arrangement for tax relief. Now, the scheme I've chosen has a relief at source arrangement, which means deductions are taken after tax, which is why I haven't selected that box. And then you can record the date that your payments to the pension provider are due. So I've just gone with the 22nd of each month in this case. Finally, we're going to make this our default plan. So we're going to automatically enroll employees into this pension group, but that can be changed if required during the pay process. And if I then click add, we've added our pension group, and that'll be used to work out their contributions. Now with Nest, you also need to add a payment source, which you'll have already set up on the Nest online portal. So I'm just going to name mine and set it as the default. You need to mark it as a qualifying scheme. So we've got the box ticked there already. And then we just need to tick the box to accept the terms. And we can then save that pension scheme. So now that that scheme has been created, I can tick the box to say that that pension scheme qualifies. I'll then just scroll to the bottom of this checklist. So my last task is to communicate auto-enrolment changes to our employees. And we do have an option here to print some letters. So this is a letter that you can send to your new employees, just letting them know about auto-enrolment legislation. So I'm just going to close those letters. I'm going to mark that step as complete. And if we return to the summary, we can see that we've completed that checklist. And if I go back to pensions, I can then view my pension details. I can make any changes if needed using Edit Pension, and then we can add any additional pension schemes that we might have, maybe with other providers. So that's your auto enrolment and pension setup, and we are now just about ready to complete our first pay run.
So that was automatic enrolment and pensions. So we are almost ready to run the payroll. Before I show you that, we'll just do a quick recap on the pensions information. So there are 4 providers that have specific options within the software, or you can add your own pension. If your provider isn't on that list, don't worry, just click add your own pension and follow the on-screen steps. If your provider is there, keep an eye out for the question mark icons at the top of the page. That will take you to our help articles with specific guidance on how to set up pensions for those particular providers. In the video demo, we did set up a Nest pension. And for Nest specifically, you will be asked for employer reference number, your group and your payment source, and you will need to set up those things exactly as they are set up on your Nest portal. They are case sensitive, so they need to be exactly as they are with Nest. You can then go on to select your contribution rates and percentages or amounts and your earnings basis as well. It's really important that if you're unsure on any of those settings, you do check those with your provider to make sure that you're deducting the correct pension. And you can also check the tax relief and clarify with your provider if this is deducted before or after tax. Before tax is a net pay arrangement and after tax is relief at source. With Nest, you can also send your pension information directly from payroll to the provider when you've processed each pay run. So keep a lookout on our help articles for information on how to do that. We are now ready to process a pay run. So we'll demo running through a typical pay run and what you'll need to do at the end of the P32 reporting period as well. I'll just pop that video on for you now, and we'll be back in just a moment.
In this final demo, I'm going to take you through processing a pay run in Sage Payroll. Now before I get started, I just want to show you one setting. As part of the pay run, we will be producing pay slips for our employees. So if you go to Settings and then into Payslip Settings, you'll be able to choose what style of payslip you want to either print or email to your employees. So this is down to personal preference. 3 different options you can choose from, and you'll see there's a preview of what each payslip looks like. And when you found the one that you're happy with, if you click on to save, that will be the payslip template that will be used when you issue those to your employees. So if I now head back to the summary, you'll see that we have a weekly pay run and a monthly pay run coming up. And for this demo, we're going to run our weekly pay run for the 5th of March. So I could go to this button to process the pay run, or alternatively, I can go to the Pay Runs tab. And you'll see here, we've got the Process Pay Run button for our next weekly pay run. So I'm going to click on that right now. And you'll see that it takes us into a really simple 4-step process. We're going to work our way through. And the first step is to confirm our pay date for week 48, and in this case it's picked out the Friday as our pay date, which comes from our pay calendar. Now if required, it can be changed to another date within the same tax period, but in this case we always pay on a Friday, so we're going to keep that as the 5th of March. I can then click on to Next, and we get to a section where we can add any absences that would require a statutory payment. So for example, maternity, paternity or adoption leave details can be entered, or sickness information if you need to pay any statutory sick pay. Now you can repeat this for any of your weekly paid employees, in this case by selecting their name on the left hand side, but in this instance we don't have any absences we need to record, and we're just going to click on to Next, where we can start to enter the payment details. Now, because this is the first time we've processed a pay run for these employees, there are no payments allocated to them right now. But what we can do is we can hover over Add Payment. And for this weekly paid employee, I'm going to assign the basic hours payment, as we're going to be paying them an hourly rate. And what I can then do is I can enter the number of hours worked this week, so 35 for example, and the hourly rate, which I'm going to enter as £15 per hour. And what you'll see as that payment has been entered is we had an alert telling us that this employee is an eligible employee and they've been automatically enrolled into our pension scheme. And that's because they meet the relevant criteria. They're aged between 22 and state pension age, and they're earning more than the equivalent of £10,000 per year. That's £192 per week. And you'll see that they've been assigned to our Nest pension, and the pension contribution has been calculated automatically. So we could add any other payments that this employee needs, and if we haven't already set it up, we can add a new payment directly from here. So I'm going to create one under the salary category for a commission payment that I want to give to this employee. So I'm happy with the name and the description. I can choose whether to include it in pension earnings or qualifying earnings. And with this being a fixed amount payment, I will enter the amount I want to pay as the rate, and that will then be added to this employee's payments. So again, the tax, national insurance and pension contribution are calculated automatically, and I can repeat the same steps for my other weekly paid employees, just the one in this case. So I've got employee 3, where I'm going to add basic hours. They're not working as many hours, just 20 hours this week, and their hourly rate will be £10 per hour. But again, they have earned enough to be automatically enrolled. You can see they've been put into our Nest pension. We've got some options to manage the enrolment should we need to use them. So once you're happy with all the payments entered, we can move on to the final stage, where we're going to confirm the payments. You'll see here we're paying 2 employees, and it shows us the total cost to the employer. So that's the cost of the gross wages, things like pension and employer national insurance. We can get a breakdown of those amounts by opening the detailed report. which opens a report in a separate tab. It's quite useful to check over. And then we've got the employee pay breakdown, listing the net pay and the pension contributions, and also an option of previewing the pay slip for these employees. So if you want to see a draft of the pay slip, you can preview that first. Make sure you're happy with what that looks like, and we will be producing the official pay slips once we've completed the pay run. So I've also got pay trends. This will start to compare previous periods with the current period. And once we're happy with all this information, we can click Complete Pay Run. And that is the point at which the FPS, the full payment submission, will be sent to HMRC. So this is where we're going to need to provide our user ID and password. So I'm just going to pop mine in just here. And I'd recommend that you store these details for future submissions, so you don't have to enter them each time. And if you click Confirm, that then submits the payroll information to HMRC. And you can see that that FPS is now being transmitted. So this is the completed pay run screen. And first thing we'll see is the employee pay breakdown. And this is the same section that we'll be able to produce pay slips for our employees. So if you've entered an email address and password, you'll be able to email a payslip to them. You can do that for an individual employee by clicking on the email icon, or you can print an individual payslip by opening the PDF and then printing that there onto plain paper. You could even export all of the payslips if you perhaps wanted to keep a PDF copy for your own records. And there's an option to export all payslips via email as well. Now just underneath we can see that the FPS submission has now successfully sent. So we've reported our payroll to HMRC, and we do need to sort of make our payment to HMRC in the next 21 days. And there is a link because this is the last pay run of the tax period where we'll be able to record the payment and submit an EPS to HMRC. We've got a section here for pension submissions. So with Nest and Smart Pensions, you'll be able to submit the details directly to the pension provider. But with other pension providers, you'll be able to produce a report that you can save to CSV. And if you need any help with this step, you've got the help icon that you can click on, and that will take you to the relevant help pages. Again, we've got our payment method breakdown and pay trends. And I will just point out again, because this is the last pay run of a tax month, I have now got the option of viewing my P32, the employer payment record. And if I just take a look at that right now, that gives us a breakdown of how much we need to pay to HMRC. So that's our amount due for the February tax month. So if I pop back to the summary, we can see that we've got our next weekly pay run on the 12th of March. We've got the same link to record our payment, and another reminder that we've got a submission to Nest for this pay run. And if I did go back to the pay run section, that weekly pay run is now a historical entry. So I can look back on this should I need to. If I ever need to produce the reports again, the pay slips, the detailed report, or view any of the other information for this pay run. And it's also where you can edit a pay run if you discover a mistake further down the line that you want to come back and correct. One last thing I should mention, when you've completed a pay run, it would be possible to report on it using the reports under this reporting tab. So a very popular one is employee net pay, which I'm just going to run for the weekly period that I've just completed, which was week 48. So a very simple report listing your employees and their net pay values, and you can export to PDF or CSV, which will then give you a summary of the net wages that you will need to pay out for that particular pay run.
So that was our last video demo for you today. So just to recap, there's some steps here on the screen that you would take to run your payroll. So there's only 4 steps to run through your pay run. You confirm your pay date, you add your absences, add any payments and deductions that you might need on that person, add them to each employee, and then you can complete the pay run and get the relevant information from your reports after that. So again, showing you the completed pay run screen here, this will give you your pay slips, allow you to complete all tasks for the P32 reporting period, and you can view your pension submissions as well. Once you get to the end of the tax month or quarter, there's an option here to do your EPS, which is at the bottom, so that's record payment / EPS. That will submit to HMRC. You can also get your P32 report from here, and that will show you your breakdown of the payments due to HMRC. So the deadline for your EPS submission is the 19th of the following month. Now, when you make your payment to HMRC, if you pay by cheque, your payment is due by the 19th as well. Or if you pay electronically, the payment is due by the 22nd of the following month to HMRC. Once you have completed all of the pay runs within that tax month or quarter, there's no need to delay completing your EPS. You can do that as soon as you're ready. So when you click on the option either within the completed pay runs tab or your summary tab, click on the option for record payment EPS. It will confirm the amount to pay to HMRC and the payment date. So the amount here is taken from your P32 report, and if you have accounting, that will be posted into your account software if you have the integration set up. Please look out on the help files for more help and information on your EPS and payroll integration settings. So this brings us to the end of what we are going to cover today in this Getting Started webinar. There are other things that you could explore, such as things like pension submissions, and you can always go to our further support, which is our help centre. There's plenty of links and information on our handout that you can get from the right-hand side of the screen if you haven't already. So you can get in touch with us as well. So if you want to learn any more, just click on the subject. You've got your drop-downs on the left-hand side. Any article that you go into, at the bottom of that article, you will see a Getting in Touch link, which will take you to more options from us. You've got the Q&A live, and that is highly recommended by us. You can go into there, it's a forum, and you can get an answer from our experts within minutes. You've got your online chat, your telephone support, and your Sage City forum as well. So thank you for attending today. I hope that you have found that useful and you're confident in how you can now set up and run your Sage Payroll. You will be receiving an email after today's session. You will get a survey as well. So if you could let us know how you found the session today, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thanks again and stay safe, and we hope to see you on another webinar again soon.